Secretary Bernhardt, thank you for appearing before the subcommittee this morning in your first hearing since you were confirmed as Secretary of Interior. Although this is a budget hearing, I'm not going to spend much time going over your budget proposal. I think it's fair to say the administration's proposal is dead on arrival. We simply are not going to defund the Land and Water Conservation Fund or reduce the payment in lieu of taxes program or cut programs to fulfill programs that fulfill the trust and treaty obligations to Native Americans. Instead, we will work on a bipartisan budget agreement as we've done in the past, and we will prevent sequestration and meet our needs as a nation. We could also spend this entire hearing probing your various conflicts of interest. It's clear you are making decisions that benefit former clients instead of the American people, but the Inspector General has opened an investigation, and we will be interested in reviewing those findings. So I will instead use my limited time talking about policy. Let me start with climate change. Mr. Secretary, you said at a hearing last week you are, quote, not losing sleep over scientific reports that carbon dioxide is at the highest levels ever recorded in human history. This is deeply troubling. Let me tell you, along with many Americans, I am losing sleep over climate change and over this administration's stubborn refusal to address its threat. What we see with our own eyes every day, extreme weather events, droughts, heat waves, is clear. We are already seeing that our national parks and public lands are some of the most vulnerable. Tribal nations are in the bullseye. Our forests in New Mexico and across the Southwest are experiencing more catastrophic wildfires. Drought in the Colorado River looks like it is here to stay at a time when 40 million people rely on that increasingly stressed source of water. As my colleague, Chairman Murkowski, well knows, Alaskan natives are literally losing their communities to increasing ocean levels and facing the decline of traditional food sources like walrus because of decreased sea ice. And this data point exemplifies the crisis. Glacier National Park in Montana is unlikely to have any actual glaciers by 2030. Wildlife habitats are changing and more species than ever are threatened with extinction. A United Nations panel just identified climate change as a major cause of our current biodiversity crisis, which threatens 1 million species of plants and animals worldwide. Climate change is the most pressing issue of our time. It is an existential threat. Secretary Bernhardt, federal law, including the Federal Lands Policy Management Act, the National Park Service Organic Act, and the Wilderness Act, require the department to manage federal lands and waters for the benefit of future generations. It is impossible to meet that mandate if you disregard climate change. I was troubled you attempted to lay the department's lack of action at Congress's feet during your recent testimony before a House committee. This isn't about shalls, as you put it, blaming Congress as a dodge. This is about how you choose to exercise the broad discretion Congress vested in the Department of Interior. Past administrations chose to take on climate change, to harness the agency's vast authority to tackle our generation's defining issue. But instead, this administration is actively working to dismantle every tool to address the threat, including gutting the BLM methane waste rule and rescinding policies that address climate change planning and mitigation. This administration's focus on energy dominance has wiped out all climate change efforts. There are also plenty of other areas where I see the devastating effects of your policies. For instance, on the 5-year anniversary of the Organ Mountains Desert Peaks National Monument in southern New Mexico, I am concerned about Interior's reduction of national monuments, even those with broad support in the community. I'm troubled by efforts to roll back species protection, where it's gutting sage grouse management plans or weakening Endangered Species Act regulations, and reports that the department is actively working to politicize science, including bearing a study showing the devastating effects of the pesticide chlorpyrifos on 70% of species listed under the Endangered Species Act. I'm concerned the department is making funding decisions in a moth that threatened an Indian water rights settlement that took 51 years to resolve. After months of negotiations, the department is now withholding appropriated dollars. The parties in the project are shovel-ready, but Interior is stalling. And I'm concerned by the actions that disregard the importance of natural and cultural resource values if they get in the way of development. We see this in the department's efforts to expand oil and gas development in the region surrounding Chaco Cultured National Historic Park in New Mexico. The department keeps pressing forward even though Native American tribes in Congress have objected to the effect that this development will have on such a sacred landscape. I could go on, but I'm eager to ask questions and hear what you have to say. You have had a hand in many of these decisions, Secretary Bernhardt, decisions I view as deeply damaging. So I appreciate the chance to have a frank discussion on these policies. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.